Thank you very much. I'm very sure that you've enjoyed that carefully packaged.
It's the Ogun State's third investors forum tagged the Emerging Economic Powerhouse.
All under one roof.
Ogun State in the southwest, under the government of Ibikunle Amosun, seems to be on a daily quest for economic development in the state and has consistently organized the Investors Forum, with earlier ones focusing on opening the agrarian state to business and prosperity for the over 7 million people.
Overall performance in both 20 businesses. We are gratified that as a result of these efforts, our state recorded the most.
The governor of Ogun State, distinguished Senator Ibikunle Amosun, CON-FCA.
This time, the governor who takes the first shot on the podium states that the forum is moving on to consolidating on past successes while charting a new course for huge socio-economic development through more public-private partnership.
Roads forms the bedrock on which accessibility.
The areas of deliberation is placed on the environment, transportation, and agriculture.
It is therefore no surprise that Ogun State is the first state in Nigeria to adopt an Agropolitan development strategy. This is a development paradigm that ensures that millions of citizens engaged in agricultural value chain are able to prosper where they are located. The Agropolitan development strategy emphasizes the localization of primary production and manufacture. The goal is to enhance the incomes and welfare of the rural areas through the acceleration of integrated regional development. By this, we will embark on rural and urban linkages that encourage development of agribusiness network. The objective is a populace-based, competitive, sustainable, and decentralized Agropolitan region. Environment is a new theme this year, but as demonstrated during the COP21 Climate Change Summit in Paris in December 2015, we are aware that we cannot ignore our environment while pursuing our developmental initiatives. Ogun State has one of the last remaining virgin rainforests in West Africa, found within J4, a forest reserve located 66 kilometers from Ijebu-Ode, of which 20% is protected by the United Nations. Yet, unless surrounding communities can see how preserving the forest can help them earn a decent living, they are likely to collude with illegal loggers threatening the world ecosystem. To demonstrate how agroforestry can generate wealth for local communities, Ogun State has entered into an ambitious collaboration with Lafarge-Holcim African PLC and the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund for the restoration of the Aworo and Imeko Forest Reserve.
Speaking further, the governor mentions that the environment plays a major role in business successes and must be safeguarded, especially with the challenges of climate change, while emphasizing on the need for infrastructural development, which involves good road networks and transportation system.
The strategic location of Ogun State offers immense benefit for investors in the area of logistics, distribution, and retail, which emphasizes the need for infrastructural development in the state. Ogun State is a natural transportation hub for Nigeria, as the flow of goods and people from the commercial capital Lagos via land must and does pass through our state. Indeed, whether going into or out of Lagos from any part of Nigeria, one must pass through Ogun State. We believe that an intermodal transportation network is essential in order to maximize economic growth. The development of strategically placed airports and railways is integral to Ogun State development plan. The existence of a good network of roads forms the bedrock on which accessibility and efficiency of other social amenities are built. Social amenities like school, healthcare facilities cannot be effectively utilized if there are no good access roads to them. Through the reforms we adopted, which aimed at streamlining lands and businesses registration, as well as construction permit procedure, Ogun State government sought to ensure that we put in place an enabling environment for businesses. We are gratified that as a result of these efforts, our state recorded the most improvement of all the 36 states in Nigeria, according to the World Bank Doing Business subnational ranking. On one indicator, the ease of opening business, we moved from 36th position in 2010 to 5th in 2014. According to the World Bank reports, and I quote, Ogun, one of the lowest ranked overall performers in both 2008 and 2010, is one of the top reforming states in 2014, end of quote.
Country Manager for the IFC, Mrs. Eme Essien-Lore.
The first discussion session is next with the tag Harnessing the Now, Providing for the Future.
There is so much sufficiently in the fiscal levers that actually allow economies. What type of economy will that give us? We believe that it's the genetics of Ogun, us from Ogun State. That genetic, that DNA, so to speak.
Rich or poor, you will always have.
Discussions focus on the Nigerian economy and the dynamics playing out, while also concentrating on tackling the challenges inherent. Starting with the Minister for Finance, Kemi Adeosun.
For Nigeria, I think the 3 C's are consumer, consumer, consumer.
The Finance Minister minces no words in stating how hard the negatives of overdependence on oil revenue has hit the Nigerian economy. She says the refocusing of government's expenditure on the right things in a strategic manner would produce positive results for the states through their natural endowments.
You define oil economies in global terms. We are not an oil economy. We are a big economy with some oil. And what we need to do now is to begin to reflect that in how we operate. Oil is only 13% of our GDP, yet it accounts for 70% of our revenue. The question is, the other 87% of our economy, why is it contributing so little to our revenues? And that's something this administration is determined to solve, because we believe that that is the key to creating a more resilient and more sustainable economy. The truth of the matter is most of us have never even been near where the oil is produced. We have very little to do with oil in our daily economic lives. There is so much more in Nigeria than oil, and the challenge for the government, which we're facing very squarely, is what are those other opportunities and how do we take advantage of them? We've looked at what the inhibitors to growth are, the barriers to growth. Why have we not grown the way we should have grown? And I think the general consensus is that we haven't invested sufficiently in our infrastructure. We haven't invested sufficiently in the fiscal levers that actually allow economies to grow. We have big deficiencies in power, in roads, in rail, in transport. We don't have enough ports and airports. All the solid infrastructure that's needed to drive an economy is largely lacking. And this administration is very determined to put that right. Globally, the outlook is that growth will not be as robust as it has been in previous years. It's going to be slower growth. And therefore, we have to look inwards. Globally, they're talking of the 3 C's. They say the 3 things that will drive the global economy are China, commodity, currency. For Nigeria, I think the 3 C's are consumer, consumer, consumer. We have 180 million people. We've got to have a consumer-led growth, which means we've got to source more products locally. It means we've got to manufacture. We're not going to try and manufacture everything. There's no point in us trying to go to the moon or go into space industry, but let's just do basic light manufacturing, which can be scaled up very quickly and do it for the consumer market, because I think that's the big low-hanging fruit. And I think Ogun, being positioned where it is, has got to be facing that opportunity very squarely, serving the consumer market in Nigeria.
Her speech sets the ball rolling for other speakers on the discussion panel, who are more particular about the scaling up of entrepreneurial skills and plans for desirable results for development.
There's a gap in terms of taking advantage of the value chain. It's because we do not have a definite plan for tapping into the value that we create. When the state attracts all the major players, the Nestle's and everyone that comes, it's important, and also when we identify industries where we think we have comparative advantage and we want to build on. It's not complete to just ask to look for the big players to come into the state, because with each industry and each player, the biggest thing is that value chain. And the value chain represents a lot more business than even the big business. Now, it's the value chain that represents the SMEs, the small and medium-sized businesses that will create the jobs, because they typically create far more jobs than the big multinationals can. And at the end of the day, they also add a lot to the IGI for the state. I mean, I did a little scenario in thinking about today, and I said to myself, if Ogun State were to generate 100,000 new businesses within the state, small businesses, and you were to say, okay, we'll give you this number, 2 years, 3 years, no major taxing, everybody will just pay 2,500 naira tax at the end of the year. That would be 250 million naira into the state's purse. And that's without considering the growth and all of those things that can happen. By harnessing the entire value chain and creating the structure, the facility, and the encouragement to help those energized young people to take advantage of. So most of the time, they can't necessarily identify it themselves, which is why the holistic plan is clear. When the state makes a clear presentation of where the opportunities are, and you match the people, their talents and their potentials and interests with those areas, and you empower them with definite strategic, deliberate plan, and create a financing support that would help them to take off. Yes, you will lose some, so you'll have some great NPL, and this is where we as a bank will then be interested.
We have very similar problems, some of them very intractable.
The former president of Colombia, Cesar Augusto Trujillo, takes his turn to speak. His first point hammers on the country having a good leadership without fear or favor.
What is the right things? So last year we doubled our exports.
He calls for the revival in the country's agricultural sector, which he says have become wealth for other countries like Brazil.
That is something to take into consideration, how Colombia did with all these challenges coming out of security. And at the same time, we were very poor. I mean, you say that Nigeria is poor. No, when I was president of Colombia, the per capita income of Colombia was $1,600. So Colombia, until quite recently, was also very poor. So we are a good case to look at. A good case to look at. And I am going to be open. Reading an article of President Obasanjo, my friend, talking about which is the big need of Africa in the years to come, which is the big challenge of Africa in the years to come. Leadership. And be certain of that. What you need is leadership. This country is starting to have good leadership, and you can have no doubt that the problems to come are not going to be corruption, but having good leadership to get out of the situation you are living through. And why do I say that is leadership? Because many tough decisions have to be taken in the years to come in many areas, and for that you need leadership. People who stand by the ideas they think, and even if they have opposition, even if they have protests, they do the things they have to do.